People who have been catfished. How did you catch on that you were being lied to? Story 1. About 10 years ago, I started chatting with a guy in one of the Yahoo chat rooms. Now, we'd only been chatting for a few weeks when suddenly he disappeared offline for about 2 weeks. I was so worried, but then his sister contacted me and told me he'd been in a terrible motorcycle accident. He was in ICU, but she kept in touch with me to let me know how he was. After about a month, he got back online and we talked every day. We traded pics and eventually I got on the webcam to say hi. He couldn't do the same because of some issues with his computer. We talked like this for nearly 3 years. It was around this time that I realized his sister was actually him. It didn't matter though. I was totally head over heels for him. Then one day, he just disappeared. His profile was deleted, all his accounts were gone, and I've not heard a single word from him ever since. I still have absolutely no idea who he or she really was, and it messed me up for a long time. I still think about it sometimes, and I'd do anything to know the truth. Story 2. In my sophomore year of college, my friend Carrie, male 19, met a girl named Kelly in a chat room. They talked a lot and got close. One day, Kelly revealed that her boyfriend hurts her constantly. Carrie drove to a city a few hours away to rescue her and learned that Kelly was really Kenny. Kenny tortured Carrie into giving up all his passwords and then took him out and left his body in a field. Then Kenny impersonated Carrie online for several days in an attempt to cover his tracks. He did a bad job and got caught and took his own life in jail before trial. I realize how this sounds with all the names being like KE something something Y, but it's a true story. You can Google it. It really messed me up for a while. Story 3. About 6 years ago, I found out my brother was a catfish. He had been catfishing this young man in the UK whilst being in America. He had fake pictures and a fake name, but his real phone number. The guy being catfished, well, we'll call him Lenny, would repeatedly call my brother and leave messages on our house phone. My brother and Lenny often sent each other packages of sweets. Lenny made the decision to come to America to visit since he's never been. My brother agreed. On the day Lenny arrived in Texas, my brother told him the truth but never actually met up with Lenny. Lenny tried all week trying to convince my brother to meet him, telling him he just wanted to know who he really was. My brother never showed. Lenny called religiously every day for about a month trying to get my brother back. I think he really loved him. After that, I never heard from him again. Story 4. So when I was a freshman in high school, I was big into Neopets and had a clique. I ran on the boards and we chatted offsite as well. 2 of those people were Shelby and Adam, the same age as myself, more or less, and dating. Adam had a sister, Kelsey, I think, who was also in the clique. Well, it came to pass, as internet relationships do, that Shelby and Adam broke up and Adam and I started talking or dating. Shelby gave us her blessing. We shared pics and he was a typical emo-looking kid which 14-year-old me loved. We talked on the phone only once or twice. I was very shy about it, so didn't mind the lack of voice communication. At one point, he sent me a YouTube video of him and his friends. There wasn't much talking and it was all pretty muffled and it sounded like they were all speaking German. Adam and I eventually broke up and it was after that the big reveal came. There was no Adam. Kelsey had made him up and had been posing as him all along. I asked Shelby about it and apparently she had found out when they had broken up too, but Kelsey had made a promise not to tell. Gee, thanks. Story 5. Oh boy, this is going to be a fun story. I used to be on Omegle, a chat site, a few times when I was 17 or so. Everyone asked age and gender. Most of them would disconnect when you said you were a male, so at one point I told people I was female just to be able to talk to people. Anyway, I connected to a girl and we had great time together. We chatted for 2 hours or so, I believe, before we gave each other our Skype addresses. I had to create mine in a quick hurry because I didn't have a fake girly Skype address that matched my fake name. We went on to chat almost every day just for fun, and even though I knew I was lying to her by being a girl, I still had some fun, but I felt really guilty for lying to her. I knew we couldn't meet in real life, even though we lived like really close to each other. One day, she confessed that she was lying to me about something. That thing turned out to be that she was a guy as well. Well, we kept in contact and we had a great time together. We actually met each other once. He died 2 years later though, but still, good times. Story 6. Not me, but my father-in-law. He lost his wife 7 years ago, and after a while was tired of having an empty house and no one to talk to. He tried online dating but went to a free site and got hooked. A lady who claimed she lived in Chicago started chatting him up. She was an international traveler for business. She had pics and seemed friendly. They chatted for a few weeks and then made plans to meet after she came back from business. He kept telling us some of the details about this amazing lady he met. but we don't want to be too invasive, so didn't ask a lot of questions. Luckily for him, her trip back was a holiday Thanksgiving weekend, and we all happened to be at his house. She was supposed to fly in on Saturday, and he kept going to his room in private to chat with her about the details of her trip. On Friday, he came down all sad and said she sent him a heartbreaking message. Her plane got stuck somewhere in Europe due to weather, forgot where, and while she was waiting, her purse was stolen. She had no phone, no credit cards, no ID, no tickets, etc. She needed him to send money so she could get back home, and she was scared and alone in a country she had never visited. Now, if we hadn't been there and he told me some of the details, which of course set off my alarms, he would have sent her a couple of grand just to get her back home. I explained to him the concept of catfishing, and he didn't believe me at first, so I had him ask her for some more details. How was she reaching him with no phone? She claimed she was borrowing laptops at the airport. How come she never talked on the phone? She said she gets very shy on the phone and prefers using a dating site to chat. What is the flight number so we can track it coming to the USA? She provided one, but it was bunk and not stuck due to the weather. When we called her out on it, she tried the emotional tactic and said she was shaking in sadness and betrayal that he couldn't trust her after she gave him her heart. She kept going for emotional responses but stopped responding with any attempts to get actual proof from her. We stopped responding, and a day or two later, she messaged him one last try and claimed a friend paid for a new ticket for her, but she still needed money, a lesser amount, to pay some sort of fine or she would be stuck there and could maybe go to jail. He wouldn't want her to have to go to jail, would he? Yeah, it sucked that it happened because he's a super trusting guy. Even a few weeks later, he wasn't certain that she wasn't real despite the whole family telling him it was a scam. I think he sent her money in the first part for the original ticket, and the family didn't get involved until the stolen purse part of the scam. Of course, she was most likely a he using stolen pics online. I did an image search on one of the photos, but nothing came up. Moral of the story time: if you have anyone over 50 in your life, make sure you explain to them about different types of internet scams, especially if they're into shopping, dating, meeting friends, etc. It's a whole different world than what they grew up with, and the scammers are getting very good at it. I know a few elderly that have been scammed over the phone, but the internet brings a whole new level of scamming. Story 7. I was probably 19, very bad with women, and very into role playing on things called MUXs. Think a roleplay-centric all-text MMO. So I met a girl in one of those MUXs. She was a senior in high school, and I had just graduated. We started hanging out online, which went to let's call and talk about the plots we're running, which became I love you in a couple of weeks. It was a lot of fun. We'd sit on the phone and laugh about stuff until 3 a.m., or whenever her dad would come in and tell her to hang up. Well, calls then start slowing down. Then the letters stopped getting responded to. Eventually, she just stopped talking to me altogether. About then, I started putting the pieces together, how her pictures were always like some girl in a crowd or some girl's school photos, or how all my email came back returned to sender until she gave me a new, completely different address. The signs were all there. I was just willfully ignoring them. I think there probably were some feelings on her end. My theory is that she was a lot younger than she was claiming, and I was talking a lot of nonsense about her moving to my state so we could be together. I think she got scared, or her parents found out she was talking to an older man and she cut contact. The romance seemed too directional. I liked making her laugh and making silly plans with her. She seemed to genuinely enjoy my humor and company. But again, she was telling me she was 17, and how hard is it not to laugh at 17 sometimes? So if your name is Rashni, or if you pretended to be a girl named Rashni in like 2000, no hard feelings. Thanks for laying the groundwork and making my current relationship, which has a temporary long-distance aspect, a lot easier. And whenever I think about our imaginary son, Spaghetti Bucket, I smile and wish you well. Story 8. Saw a guy, Red Fish, with a cute profile picture on Grindr, messaged him on the app but never expected a response. He replied really quickly and was really eager to chat. He sent 2 pictures of his body, but I noticed that his hands were a lot bigger in the other one. I ignored it because my penis was thinking, but then a random stranger, Catfish, messaged me on Grindr claiming to be Red Fish's friend, how they were really close and go to the same college. I responded politely, just making conversation. Redfish then messaged me later that night asking how I found Catfish. I said he was alright, but I already knew the deal, so I just played along. I just wanted to see how long he could keep this up. I took a screenshot of the profile picture from Redfish's account and Google image searched it, and it was on a ton of tumblers. After a few days of talking to the both of them, and Redfish basically talking about Catfish the whole time, Redfish's account blocked me. So I messaged Catfish to say, hey, what's up with Redfish? Why did he block me? Catfish says he knows nothing about that and says he'll ask, then comes back and says Redfish won't tell him why. Right. Then I just reply, one fish, two fish, redfish, catfish. Lame, I know, but I really like Dr. Seuss. Catfish then types one mother of a story of how he's shocked that I would even think he would do that to someone, and that he would never because he's been a victim of catfishing before, to the extent of someone stalking him and having to take out a restraining order. I don't believe it for a second because Catfish is fat and not very attractive in general. Sorry if I sound judgmental. I then told him how I Googled the profile picture and he confessed to all of it. He kept making excuses about how he was tired of being on the sidelines and he just wanted to not be ignored. The whole time, he just kept making excuses for his behavior, not once feeling like he had done something wrong. Story 9. It was when I was a teenager, not too long after the birth of ICQ, a chat program. I'd met this one person in a chat room and things started to get more and more personal. Not too long after, they eventually broke down and admitted that they had been lying and that they weren't a young, hot girl, but instead a man. The guy seemed really remorseful, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him that I actually wasn't a young, hot lesbian either. Story 10. My ex-girlfriend tried catfishing me to test me. It took me about 30 seconds of looking through the profile before I realized that the name was her name backward. The craziest thing is that she really thought it would work. That girl was bonkers. Story 11. Okay, so I actually had this happen to me recently. I was using a dating app and started talking to this girl. She had 5 photos on there, 2 of her and 3 group photos. Nothing surprising for a girl on a dating site. We agreed to grab a coffee and I arrived early and sat outside. This girl walks up to me and says, hello. Introduced herself as a girl I was meeting but did not look anything like her. Something was familiar about her, but I couldn't go and take out my phone to check, so I went ahead. We ordered coffee and I thought about making a break for it right then and there when she went in and put sugar in it but decided to stay. We started talking and we picked up on the conversations we were having online, but after about half a cup, I had enough and it wasn't going anywhere, so I made some excuse and left. Back in my car, I opened up my phone to look at her profile again and figure out why she looked familiar. She was in the photos. She was one of the girls in the group, but she was using her friend as the main photo. Very weird. The sad part was that she wasn't terrible looking, boring though, but not as good looking as her friend. The girl was probably all kinds of crazy or something. Story 12. So I was talking to this girl, initially from Twitter. She was easily a 9 out of 10, one of the hottest girls I'd ever seen. That was my first clue, because the odds of her instantly going for an average guy like me, whom she had never met, were very slim, especially as she had a fair few followers showing interest. Eventually, there were loads of inconsistencies in the stuff she told me about herself. She was way too clingy for someone I had never met. I just put that down to me being different, i.e., not reciprocating any feelings, never even telling her how hot she was, etc. She wanted to meet with me, but I decided against it after speaking to a friend who knew her in real life, and he told me she had a long-term boyfriend, despite her not having much experience with guys, according to her. I then started hearing rumors that she had 2 accounts on Facebook, and one of them, the one that added me, could be a fake or a decoy, etc. After that, I figured it was too much of a hassle to keep up with. There were so many signs to avoid her, so I cut off all contact. And well, funny enough, I read a blog post a few years later from the real girl who said that this girl had been impersonating her for the past 10 years, had been leading guys on, and etc., and went really far with her charade to the point where she seemed mentally unstable, so bullet dodged, I guess. Story 13. Met someone on OkCupid. He was moving from NYC to my city and said he was a surgeon. This was my first red flag. I wondered why a successful surgeon was on a free dating site. We chatted for 2 weeks, but he didn't want to talk on the phone. Red flag number 2. At this point, I assume he's a fake. He deleted his profile, saying he couldn't wait to meet me in 3 weeks when he was scheduled to fly in for a weekend to find a condo. I reverse searched his photo and found another profile, the same story, but it said he was moving to Phoenix. Red flag number 3. At this point, I know he's fake, but now I'm having fun making him think I'm totally hooked. He gave me bad medicine advice when I sprained my ankle, then told me he had an obsession with feet and that he would be making sure I would get daily pedicures when I quit my job and move in with him. The weekend he was supposed to fly in, his current almost former boss died, and he couldn't make it. I sent him screenshots of his other profile and told him I knew all along and had just been messing with him. Good times. Story 14. I was playing League of Legends and this guy added me after we played a game. His English was broken, but I didn't think much of it, and we started to duo together. We did really well, but strangely, he kept referring to me as a she. Again, I didn't think twice about it, and I just kept playing with him, but eventually, he started to get really creepy and told me all these things about him. We found out that there was a significant time difference between us, but he would log in at the most ridiculous times for him just to play with him and started to become a white knight. So, whenever anyone would talk trash to me, pretty normal, he would vehemently defend me and start fights with other team members, opposing players, and whatever. Shortly after that, he would start saying goodnight, BB, which I thought was bye bye. So I would say, haha, goodnight, BB, back to him. Then he'd send me hearts like the greater than sign and the number 3, and I thought we were guys being guys, so I would jokingly message that heart back to him. Eventually, he started calling me his girlfriend when he was defending me, and I realized he full on thought I was a female the entire time. I messaged him after that game and was like, dude, I'm a guy, and he went on a rampage. He started cursing me out, and by the end of it, the reason why he thought I was a female was because of my username and because I used proper grammar and spelling. Just because I didn't use proper grammar here does not mean I suck at it. Story 15. I met this Welsh girl on 4chan that was into a lot of the same bands as I was, like the same comedians as I did, and shared a lot of my political views. She was awesome, and we stayed up all night talking about anything and everything. We went on to spend a good 6 to 8 hours almost every single day, talking pretty much constantly for the next 3 months. She was amazing, funny as hell, had really interesting opinions on a lot of things, introduced me to a ton of new music and films, and was just generally a really lovely person. I was incredibly depressed at the time and had just dropped out of college the year prior due to ever-increasing anxiety and an inability to function in public. She was the only person I had ever felt genuinely comfortable talking to, and I was completely fascinated by her. I look forward to waking up every day just because I enjoyed her company. We'd stay up all night talking and watching TV shows, and I had genuinely started to fall for her. Then one night, she said goodnight and we'll talk tomorrow, like normal, and I headed off to bed. The next day, she didn't come online. A few days went by and I hadn't heard from her at all, and I started to get really worried. I started checking the news and obituaries in her town but found nothing. I went a little bit mental at this point, and I couldn't eat or sleep properly for weeks on end. I had no idea what the hell was going on. I genuinely thought I might have completely made the whole thing up and that I was seriously mentally unwell. I thought of her and what could have happened possibly every single day. The anxiety and stress this caused me actually made me physically and mentally ill. This went on for months and I got worse and worse, eventually leading to a full-blown nervous breakdown. So, not going into details on that, but eventually I became functional again, and a few months down the line, I decided to look into her a little further to see if I could figure out what had happened and get some closure. I came across a girl on a social media site whose pictures she had stolen. From there, I began to unravel everything. I am actually doing fairly well now, and I feel a lot healthier than I have in a long, long time. It's weird, but I still think of her from time to time, and despite knowing full well it was either a guy or someone entirely different from the pictures, I still get quite sad knowing I'll never get to talk to them again. And despite it really messing me up for a long time, I'm better for it. I just hope they're doing okay too. Story 16. He claimed to be a US Marine yet had an extravagant amount of free time to play MMORPGs. Someone here on Reddit offered to run his name through the USMC database and, well, no surprise, he didn't exist. Well, someone by his name did, but they had been discharged in 1958 or something, whereas this guy claimed to be 21. Good old stolen valor.
People who have been catfished. How did you catch on that you were being lied to? Not me, but my father-in-law. He lost his wife 7 years ago, and after a while was tired of having an empty house and no one to talk to. He tried online dating, but went to a free site and got hooked. The lady who claimed she lived in Chicago started chatting him up. She was an international traveler for business. She had pics and seemed friendly. We chatted for a few weeks and then made plans to meet after she came back from business. He kept telling us some of the details about this amazing lady he met, but we didn't want to be too invasive, so didn't ask a lot of questions. Luckily for him, her trip back was a holiday Thanksgiving weekend, and we all happened to be at his house. She was supposed to fly in on Saturday, and he kept going to his room in private to chat with her about the details of her trip. On Friday, he came down all sad and said she sent him a heartbreaking message. Her plane got stuck somewhere in Europe due to weather, forget where, and while she was waiting, her purse was stolen. She had no phone, no credit cards, no ID, no tickets, etc. She needed him to send money so she could get back home, and she was scared and alone in a country she'd never visited. If we hadn't been there and he told me some of the details, which of course set off my BS alarms, he would have sent her a couple grand to get back home. I explained to him the concept of catfishing, and he didn't believe me at first. I had him ask her for some more details. How was she reaching him with no phone? She claimed she was borrowing laptops at the airport. How come she never talked on the phone? She said she gets very shy on the phone and prefers using the dating site to chat. What is the flight number so we can track it coming to the USA? She provided one, but it was bunk and not stuck due to weather. When we called her out on it, she tried the emotional tactic and said she was shaking in sadness and betrayal that he couldn't trust her after she gave him her heart. She kept going for emotional responses but stopped responding with any attempts to get actual proof from her. He stopped responding, and a day or two later, she messaged him one last try and claimed a friend paid for a new ticket for her, but she still needed money, a lesser amount, to pay some sort of fine or she would be stuck there and could maybe go to jail. He wouldn't want her to have to go to jail, would he? Yeah, it sucked that it happened because he's a super trusting guy. Even a few weeks later, he wasn't for certain that she wasn't real, despite the whole family telling him it was a scam. I even kind of think he sent her the money in the first part of the original ticket, and the family didn't get involved until the stolen purse was part of the scam. Of course, she was most likely a he using stolen pics online. I did an image search in one of the photos, but nothing came up. Moral of the story time: if you have anyone over 50 in your life, make sure you explain to them about different types of internet scams, especially if they're into shopping, dating, meeting friends, etc. It's a whole different world than what they grew up with, and the scammers are getting very good at it. I know a few elderly that have been scammed over the phone, but the internet brings a whole new level of scamming. Yep, gotta look out for them old folks. Story 2. I actually unintentionally catfished someone. I was playing League of Legends and this guy added me after we played a game. His English was broken, but I didn't think much of it, and we started to duo together. We did really well, but strangely he kept referring to me as a she. Again, I didn't think twice about it and I just kept playing with him, but eventually he started to get real creepy and told me all these things about him. We found out that there was a significant time difference between us, but he would log on at the most ridiculous times for him just to play with him and started to become a white knight. Whenever anyone would trash talk me, pretty normal, he would vehemently defend me and start fights with other team members, opposing players and whatever. Shortly after that, he would start saying, "Goodnight, BB," which I thought was bye-bye, so I would say, "Haha, goodnight, BB," back to him. Then he'd send me hearts, and I thought we were guys being guys, so I would jokingly message the heart back to him. Eventually, he started calling me his girlfriend when he was defending me, and I realized he full-on thought I was a female the entire time. I messaged him after that game and was like, "Dude, I'm a guy." And he went on a rampage. He started cussing me out, and by the end of it, the reason why he thought I was a female is because of my username and because I used proper grammar and spelling. Story 3. I was talking to this girl, initially from Twitter. It was easily a 9 out of 10. One of the most attractive girls I've ever seen. That was my first clue because the odds of her instantly going for an average guy like myself, whom she had never met, were very slim, especially if she had a fair few followers showing interest. Eventually, there were loads of inconsistencies in the stuff she told me about herself. She was way too clingy for someone I had never met. I just put that down to me being different, i.e. not reciprocating any feelings, never even telling her how attractive she was, etc. She wanted to meet with me, but I decided against it after speaking to a friend who knew her in real life, and he told me she had a long-term boyfriend. Despite her not having much experience with guys, according to her, I then started hearing rumors that she had 2 accounts on Facebook, and one of them, the one that added me, could be a fake or decoy, etc. After that, I figured it was too much of a hassle to keep up with. There were so many signs to avoid her, so I cut off all contact. Funnily enough, I read a blog post a few years later from the real girl who said that this girl had been impersonating her for the past 10 years, had been leading guys on, etc., and went really far with her charade to the point where she seemed mentally unstable. So, bullet dodged, I guess. I figured I'll say a bit more. What I should clarify is that this girl was not just using someone else's pictures. She was using the girl's life. She pretended to be the exact same girl in the picture and used her first name, her friends' names, her life story, everything. So, in essence, anyone would think they were talking to the real girl and could tell the real girl everything about her, even though they didn't actually know her. She made fake Facebooks of loads of her friends, used to post pictures, taking them off the real girl's Facebook, and tag the fake profiles of these friends in, leaving comments. Arguably, this was identity fraud more than catfishing, but the blog post stated that the catfish apologized and acknowledged she was crazy. She just didn't know how to stop and only did it all because she enjoyed the fake life more than her own. And she never did stop until that blog post came out. I know way too many people like this. Story 4. Saw a guy, Redfish, with a cute profile picture on Grindr. Messaged him in the app, never expected a response. He replied really quickly and was really eager to chat. He sent 2 pictures, but I noticed that his hands were a lot bigger in one. I ignored it. But then a random stranger, Catfish, messaged me on Grindr claiming to be Redfish's friend, how they were really close and go to the same college. I responded politely, just making conversation. Redfish then messaged me later that night, asking how I found Catfish. I said he was alright, but I already knew the deal, so I just played along. I just wanted to see how long he could keep this up. I took a screenshot of the profile picture from Redfish's account and Google image searched it, and it was on a ton of Tumblrs. After a few days of talking to the both of them, and Redfish basically talking about Catfish the whole time, Redfish's account blocked me. So I messaged Catfish to say, "Hey, what's up with Redfish? Why did he block me?" Catfish says he knows nothing about that and says he'll ask, then comes back and says Redfish won't tell him why. Right then, I just replied, 1 fish, 2 fish, Redfish, Catfish. Lame, I know, but I really like Dr. Seuss. Catfish then types one mother of a story of how he's shocked that I would even think he would do that to someone and that he would never because he's been a victim of catfishing before, to the extent of someone stalking him and having to take out a restraining order. I don't believe it for a second because Catfish is not very attractive in general. Sorry if I sound judgmental. I then told him how I Googled the profile picture and he confessed to all of it. He kept making some excuse about how he was tired of being on the sidelines and he just wanted to not be ignored. The whole time he just kept making excuses for his behavior, not once feeling like he had done something wrong. Story 5. I met this Welsh girl on 4chan that was into a lot of the same bands as I was, liked the same comedians as I did, and shared a lot of my political views. She was freaking awesome. We stayed up all night talking about anything and everything. We went on to spend a good 6 to 8 hours almost every single day talking pretty much constantly for the next 3 months. She was amazing. Funny as hell, had really interesting opinions in a lot of things, introduced me to a ton of new music and films, and was just generally a really lovely person. I was incredibly depressed at the time. I had just dropped out of college the year prior due to ever-increasing anxiety and inability to function in public. She was the only person I had ever felt genuinely comfortable talking to, and I was completely fascinated by her. I looked forward to waking up every day just because I enjoyed her company. Would stay up all night talking and watching TV shows, and I had genuinely started to fall for her. Then one night she said goodnight. We'll talk tomorrow like normal, and I headed off to bed. The next day she didn't come online. A few days went by and I hadn't heard from her at all, and I started to get really worried. I started checking the news and obituaries in her town, but found nothing. I went a little bit mental at this point and couldn't eat or sleep properly for weeks on end. I had no idea what the heck was going on. I genuinely thought I might have completely made the whole thing up, that I was seriously mentally unwell. I thought of her and what could have possibly happened every single day. The anxiety and stress this caused me actually made me physically and mentally ill. This went on for months, and I got worse and worse, eventually leading to a full-blown nervous breakdown. Not going into details on that, but eventually I became functional again. A few months down the line, I decided to look into her a little further to see if I could figure out what had happened and get some closure. I came across a girl on a social media site whose picture she had stolen, and from there, I began to unravel everything. I'm actually doing fairly well now, and I feel a lot healthier than I have in a long, long time. It's weird, but I still think of her from time to time. Despite knowing full well it was either a guy or someone entirely different from the pictures, I still get quite sad knowing I'll never get to talk to them again. And despite it really messing me up for a long time, I'm better for it. I just hope they're doing okay too. The thing I wonder about is, why do they just suddenly stop like that? If I was spewing that level of BS, I'd be fine with just lying about being offended by the person or something and being like, "Don't ever contact me again. I can't believe your opinion on X. You freaking disgust me." At least give them some kind of notice. I mean, damn. So sorry they just dropped off without any explanation for closure, and I'm very glad to hear this guy's doing better. Liking the video so far? Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories like this one. Story 6. A few years ago after a big breakup, I decided to try the online dating scene. I eventually matched with a pretty girl called Corinna, who gave me her Facebook as she said she couldn't chat on the dating site. So, naturally, I added her, but didn't actually strike up any conversation. Just lurked to see what kind of person she was. She was very into playing Call of Duty, so I added her on there and sometimes joined her game. She was always playing with another guy, though. Called Hector, so I was hesitant to interfere and start chatting, but after a while I joined their party, found they had some pretty fun chats, so started talking to them. After a few months of playing COD, we were all good friends, and I used to chat to Corinna on the phone a lot and generally flirt, etc. We all lived in London, so kept saying we should meet up, but plans always fell through. Turns out Corinna had a long-term illness and was in and out of hospital a lot and used to send us photos of her scars and all the equipment she was hooked up to. It also turned out that she had a boyfriend, a weird South African dude called Chris who used to join our COD games and sucked. And he and Corinna would bicker and fight, etc., and he was generally a jerk, telling her he loved her all the time. I had a sneaking suspicion that he was off the same dating website and, like Hector and me, had never actually met her. He'd just taken the whole thing a bit too far and she seemed fed up with it. About 4 months after this whole thing started, still hadn't met up but still flirting, etc. Corinna was in hospital again. And as I was waking up for work one morning, she texted me something like, "I drank a bottle of vodka. I think I'm going to go. Love you, X." I replied jokingly if she had a pretty sick sense of humor, but when I got home from work that day, I went on her Facebook to find tons of RIP messages. Hector had noticed too, and we were totally blown away. She'd passed away. I was pretty shaken up, but felt weird as she was really just a voice in the phone, but also an actual friend. A few months after that, her friend Liz messaged us to come play COD as a memorial to Corinna. So Hector and I started playing with her quite regularly. She was pretty good too, but didn't have a mic. She also kept wanting to meet up. Also told me she liked me, but those plans kept falling through too. Eventually I got fed up and stopped playing Xbox with him for a couple of months. Then when I decided to jump on again, I found her and Hector in a party as usual, so I joined to say hi. Liz had got herself a mic and so we all chatted away. She actually sounded similar to Corinna. Same humor and jokes, etc., which I thought was odd but shrugged it off because Corinna was gone. But my gut feeling got the best of me and I decided to assure myself that I wasn't just crazy. I scoured the internet for other references to these girls but couldn't find anything. They each had hundreds of friends and family on Facebook who they interacted with all the time, so it would have been strange to think it was someone pretending. I found nothing that could allay my suspicions and was getting tired of it, so as a last-ditch attempt, I threw some of Corinna and Liz's photos into Google image search. Nothing until… bam. One of Corinna's hospital photos matched with an American girl's blog about having cystic fibrosis. Several photos of this blog were ones Corinna had sent me. I was onto something, so I kept searching images until… bam. One of Liz's photos directly matched with a girl from Ohio. I'm from the UK. After browsing her profile a bit in astonishment, I checked her friends and there Corinna was too. Not only Corinna, but between the Ohio girls were tons of Liz and Corinna's friends and family, but the real people. After a long time checking all this, it was clear that this one girl had created hundreds of Facebook profiles with stolen photos of all these people, made them all interact. Pretty arduous task, but hey, some people get bored, I guess. I told Hector, but we kept it quiet for a bit while I surveyed Liz's activity and matched it with the Ohio girl's activity, just to be sure. Eventually, Hector ended up blowing our cover and she started deleting everything. I texted her asking for an explanation, and after denying it for a while, she came clean. I wasn't that pissed off about the deception. I was more intrigued as to why someone would go to such lengths to do this without any apparent gain to themselves. Her story was that she was actually quite ill, bored, and had few friends. Not sure whether that's true, but I didn't really get much more info after that. She wouldn't meet me in person, and we just fell out of contact and she blocked me on most platforms. I kept an eye on her Xbox gamer tag though, and she recently catfished another guy by using a couple of girls, one of whom also had cystic fibrosis. I feel bad for not warning them, but I don't want to get involved with all that again. Found a reference to another CF surfer catfishing a guy into getting married online a few years before my time, so it was probably her too, going by the name she used. Anyway, that's my long story about my first online dating experience and Moriarty to my Sherlock. Story 7. I was in my early 20s at the time and met a girl on one of the chat boards. She was attractive. She had several pictures available, all of which were candid shots and none of the stereotypical model-like photos, so I tended to believe it was legit. After a while, we started talking on the phone and it progressed into a casual relationship and inevitably led to many discussions. The thing is, she lived in the same city as me, so after a month or so, I was saying, "Hey, we need to meet or this isn't going anywhere." She finally gives me her address and tells me to come over the next day. I show up and it is this very sketchy part of town. It is near the penitentiary and the house probably should have been condemned a few years prior. I started to realize this is a bad idea, but I wanted to see it through. And there was a girl about the same age sitting out front of the house. She knew who I was and said she was the girl's friend and that she should be back soon, so we should just wait for her. This other girl was nice enough, but she probably had an extra 40 pounds on her frame and didn't resemble the girl in the photos at all. Well, soon enough, she gets me into the house and up in the bedroom, and she's talking to me like she's my friend and knows me, etc., etc. I think she was trying to make a move on me, but the entire time I was in horror due to this house. I mean, the place was disgusting. There was garbage everywhere. The bed was just a stained mattress with a partial sheet covering part of it. There was no place to sit aside from the floor. The place smelled like old ashtrays, and in the middle of summer, there was no AC, so it was stuffy and hot. However, I still didn't think it was the same girl because I just didn't recognize the voices being the same. Eventually, it became clear the girl I was expecting wasn't going to show. So I said goodbye and left. Then she contacted me on the phone later and had some sad excuses. She then went out of her way to tell me to not get her confused with her friend because their voices sound a lot alike. And then she made a little comment about her friend being heavy, to which I responded like, yeah, she was. And she tried to brush it off, but you could tell she was offended. Eventually, I figured things out and she denied it, but we stopped talking. A few months go by and she contacts me and says she's dating some guy, I suppose in an attempt to make me jealous. I wasn't. Then a month or so later, she called me to tell me she's pregnant and had all this drama. I just stopped answering her calls and her emails were just more excuses trying to explain why we never met. The whole thing was just odd. I can't believe it took me so long to see the warning signs. A few years later, the house she was living in was torn down by the city and it was now an empty lot. I have no idea what happened to her. She was a ghost. Or she was a figment of your imagination, you just didn't know it. What's your online dating disaster story? We meet at a local pub for a few drinks and we get chicken fingers. The conversation is terrible, but I notice she's taking the chicken fingers and ripping them up in her hands and putting the breading in her huge purse. So naturally, I call her out on it. She smiled and said, "Oh, I'm just feeding Sammy," and pulled out a fat chinchilla from her purse. She plopped the thing in the middle of the table and it just kind of chilled out. I played with the chinchilla a bit and she kind of got mad at me for playing with it and back in the purse it went. I was ready to call it and leave, but she mentioned she could go for some ice cream and I was cool with it. So we went to Ben & Jerry's. I get to talking about tattoos and piercings and she tells me she has piercings in her melons. And I'm like, oh? And then she showed it to me. In the middle of Ben & Jerry's at 8 p.m. I'm just kind of poker-faced. So then I decided to walk her to her car. She kiss-attacks me and, well, she was kind of cute, so I made out with her. Sort of. Her lips were tense and the whole time she licked my teeth. I friended her on Facebook for some reason after that. She had a Facebook page for a chinchilla that had more Facebook friends than I did. A few months later, the chinchilla passed away and its Facebook was a memorial page where a bunch of people, like 35, commented how much they missed it. I liked one of her statuses and she called me, crying. I unfriended her, but not the chinchilla. R.I.P. Sammy. R.I.P. Sammy. Story 2. My time to shine. Allow me to tell you the tale of when I went on a date with a Lovecraftian horror. A girl messaged me one night on OkCupid. The message was short and went something like, "Hey, you're cute. I love zombies too." I mentioned in my profile I'm a professional zombie actor. Text me. She looked decent in one picture she had of, which really should have been a red flag. I texted her and she wanted to set up a date for the following Monday, January 3rd, 2011. Fast forward to that night and I'm driving to pick her up because she said she didn't have a car or a job. Red flag too. And my GPS led me to an empty grassy field. I called her and she told me to wait in the lot of the nearby Panera Bread. I waited a few minutes and after a bit I saw a figure emerge from the tree line at the back of the field. I could see it was my date. Her hair was black and greasy in front of her face. She wore this billowy fishnet thing that kind of hid her figure, but the worst part was her lazy eye that just lolled and rolled about in her socket and would settle and stare just several inches away from my face, so it seemed like she was staring at an invisible horn growing out of the side of my head. I should have fled, but I was too much of a nice person, and if this bog witch wanted to go on a date, then by golly, I'll do it. I go inside, and I immediately discover I have a pet peeve for people who talk several decibels higher than everyone else. I grab us a booth in the far corner so she doesn't end up shouting our entire conversation. I said to her, "So, tell me about yourself," which is probably the worst possible question for me to ask. She begins with talking about how she's not like other girls, she can pull off the goth or emo or punk look all at once, that most of her friends are and they'd love to meet me. She's looking for a very obedient sub. She enjoys watching triads and let's just say her hobbies involve toes and discomfort. Now this was definitely the third red flag, but at this point I made my bed and I'm sleeping in it. She asks me about myself and I go on about my very normal hobbies and interests and she's fighting me all along the way, telling me that airsoft promotes gun cruelty and that I'll never go anywhere with a degree in graphic design. I did. Thanks. She cuts me off and asks me to talk about any female friends I have. I begin to describe a few and she keeps jutting in with, "Well, she sounds like a witch and I don't think she likes you." I stop and ask her if she has a problem and she drops this line, "I need to eliminate all competition if I'm going to have a chance with you." No. There's a long pause as I eat my food, but she eventually breaks the silence by asking me, "Do you know what really breaks the ice? Getting intimate. Want to hear a personal story?" What wasn't personal already? She goes on about some past relationship and how good it was and everything seemed fine until it ended with, "And then he gave me diseases." Now that's all the freaking red flags. I stand up, tell her it was nice meeting her, but I have to leave. She follows me out and gets in my car with me. Of all the times I left the doors unlocked, she demands to drive her home. She tells me to pull up into the grassy field, which had a dirt road I couldn't see earlier. The dirt road goes into the woods, and I expected it to come out upon a clearing with a dilapidated shack and a fire pit and a bog which she'll walk into and sink back to the depths from where she came. But no, it came out to a rather nice-looking house. But then she drops the line, "Yeah, I've been living here for the past 2 weeks with a guy I found on Craigslist." I pull up, she tries to kiss me, I push her back, tell her to get out of my car, and I drive away. I still remember her silhouette waving to me in my rearview mirror. I sped home, took a shower, washed my face, burned my clothes, and cried myself to sleep till Sunday morning. Remember, it was Monday. A lot more has happened since that day, but this was the initial date. This day gone wrong had become a bit of a legend amongst my friends, and I usually end up telling it at every party. Story 3. All right, guys, I got this. We meet up, and she's immediately asking me about my job and salary. We have a similar job, with it being a new role, and she's been there for a while, so she's making more than I am. Good for her. We go get some drinks, I hit the bathroom, and when I come back, there are 3 drinks on the table. 1 for me and 2 for her. Interesting. Maybe this means I'm getting lucky. She downs her drinks and orders another 2. I'm still working on my 1. She starts talking about her friend getting married and she's single and her life isn't going anywhere. Then she starts crying. Then she calls her friend and invites her out on our date. Next thing you know, she's in the bathroom, barfing. She comes back covered. She's crying. She pooped herself. She doesn't have any money on her, so she hopes I don't mind being stuck with a $100 bill. She messages me the next day telling me I'm a schmuck for not calling her and maybe we should try getting together again that night. Nope. Girl was going through it. Story 4. Went on a Match.com date to the movies years ago. The guy was immediately sort of creepy. Seemed perfectly normal via email, of course. But I traveled a good 45 minutes to get there, so I figured I'd at least watch the movie with him and pay for my own ticket. He had this weird look in his eyes that screamed, awkward 27-year-old that has never seen melons and is creepily close to his mother. I sat down with him and he put his hand on my leg. I moved his hand away. He put it back on my leg. I moved it away again. He got the hint and we watched in silence for a little while. Later on in the movie, it was Peter Jackson's King Kong. He put his hand back on my leg, but his fingers moved. Thank God I was wearing pants and not a skirt. I very quickly moved his hand and told him not to touch me again or I'd get up and leave. He just sort of chuckled and rolled his eyes and put his hand back on my leg. I slapped his hand away, stormed out of the theater, and he followed right after me going, What? What'd I do? I had no intention of saying anything else to him, so when I was about halfway through the lobby, he put his hand on my shoulder and tried to stop me. I quietly told him that if he didn't back off and stop following me, it'd make a scene, and that I had no intention of associating with him again. He, of course, grabbed my wrist, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, Get the heck away from me! The whole place paused and looked at us, and some big guys close by got that stance that said that if he touched me again, they'd probably kick his bum for me. I got out of there, went home, and he emailed me and texted me no less than 10 times a day for the next month. Classy. Story 5. Before I met my current boyfriend, I went out on a few dates with guys in OKC. There was one guy who I thought was pretty cute, so I decided to take a chance and go out with him. We went out for dinner, which was fine until he started talking about his ex-fiancée, who was a dancer on some popular TV show back in the Philippines, who actually had a husband, etc., etc. So that already turned me off. We got out to a movie, and he starts to fiddle right in the theater. He just starts going at it, and I'm sitting next to him horrified. I had the nerve to tell me I'm the weird one because every normal person does it in movie theaters. This was during the trailers, by the way. Then he tried to go at it with me in the theater, which I really wasn't in the mood for, so I moved across the theater to enjoy the movie while he sat in his corner doing something, for all I know. Needless to say, we never saw each other again. The movie was great, though. Dang, where do you find all these gooners, bro? Story 6. My online dating experience has always been fun, to say the least. I've gone on dates with women of all cultures and experiences, and I've met some profoundly amazing people in my life from online dating. With that said, there is one instance of one truly crazy witch that almost ended it all. Sort of a long story, but I'll try to cut it short. So I just got on with a new company, was going to be traveling to another state on the company's dime. The company gave everyone a credit card that had a $52 limit per day. I also happened to get paid for my time down there, so you could say I had a healthy amount of play money. I knew, as soon as I got there, that my first prerogative was to get a companion to tag along with me, and I didn't want to fool around with my coworkers, so I opted to just pursue online dating. So I found this nice gal, a plus-sized model. She appeared from her profile description and pictures to be a fairly normal functioning member to society. Boy, how wrong I was. How terrifyingly wrong I was. So we make plans to go to a hookah bar and shoot the crap, so to speak. I'm staying in a hotel that my company was paying for.
She rolls up in this beat-up Cadillac, rust all over. I can only glance, but I think I see what are bullet holes in the side of her car. Bullet holes? What? Yes, there were actual bullet holes in the side of this piece of crap car. I tried not to think much of it. I was in a good mood and wasn't going to let this ruin my time. So I get in the car. Now you have to remember that this is later in the evening, around 9 p.m., so I don't have a full picture of who's in the car at the time. She immediately floors it and we're off. The streetlights start to form around her face and, oh my God, what is this thing in front of me? What appeared before me was not the woman I saw in the profile, but in fact, the devil incarnate. This wild beast of a woman. This unibrow, omni-fat-rolled Sasquatch was in control of her destination. I felt deceived and disgusted. She looked nothing like her profile picture. Nothing. She stank as heck to add insult to injury. The smell burned my nostrils like it literally felt like I was inhaling garbage. It was rancid. I already knew this night was going to be a disaster, but I was already knee-deep at this point, so I persevered. I told myself that I was trying to make friends and have a good time. I was determined to just have a good night in the town, so here we are, on the interstate, and this girl is driving like a madman. I'm gripping the seats with anticipation. She tells me she's spiked. Oh my God. She pulls out a brick of grass and starts laughing, saying how good of a time we're going to have tonight. Oh my God, I'm going to jail. I just got this corporate job and haven't even started, and I just know I'm going to jail. And behind us were freaking cops. Cops! Literally covered in sweat because she's driving like a psychopath, going well over 25 miles per hour the speed limit. She's loaded on substances, and there's over a pound of grass in her car. Holy freaking crap, are those few moments tense for me. Somehow we got off the interstate. I'm alive. She starts babbling about how she's this super important person where she lives. How she's some sort of celebrity or whatever. How she was in a movie with Seth Green for 5 minutes in a cameo. No big deal, she would say a lot. No big deal. I think she was trying to impress me. I don't know. I couldn't listen because of how angry I was. There wasn't much I could do at this point, so I just had to ride this out. So I asked her where she modeled, and she told me. I asked if I could see some pictures. She says they burned up in a huge fire that took the business out. I asked if I could see her website of the photos. She says that the website was taken down due to some criminal activity with the photographers. I ask about the bullet holes in the side of the car. Why did she have them? She then proceeds to take me to the sketchy part of the city and tells me how she got them in a gang fight she was in with her brother. She then proceeds to show me her wound on her. I felt like passing out, and the date hadn't even started yet, so finally, after what felt like an eternity, we made it to the hookah bar. I started dialing frantically to get out of there, begging someone to pick me up. Nobody comes. Nobody picks me up. I reluctantly paced back to the hookah bar. I needed to get out of there, so I lied and told her that I left my wallet back at the hotel. She attempts to pay for me. No, I must insist. The gentleman always pays. And we leave. It's freaking working. Yeah, I'm going to live. And then we arrive back at the hotel. I say I'll be back down in just a minute. She insists on coming up with me. I make up some BS excuse that only company employees are allowed in the hotel, and then I straight jet to my room and lock the door. I texted her and was like, yeah, I'm not going to be coming back down. She then proceeds to call my phone again and again and again and again. She was mad. She sent me a text saying how she was going to wait outside the hotel and was going to harm me. A few minutes later, she apologizes and just wanted some companionship for the night. Then she apologizes for lying about her pictures. Then she threatened me again. I ended up calling the police and hiding in my room for the rest of the weekend. I never spoke to her again. On the plus side, I have a pretty ridiculous story to tell now. That was intense. Story 7. I lived in Austin at the time and had 420 friendly on my profile. Mistake. So I exchanged a few messages with a girl who was also 420 friendly, and we met for coffee. Before we even ordered anything, she asked me if I brought any, and I did, and we smoked a couple behind the coffee shop. Then she looked at her phone and was like, oh, I just remembered I have to go to work in half an hour. Bye. And we haven't seen each other since. Dang, she just wanted to pick me up. Crazy. Story 8. Met up with a girl for the first time after talking for a few weeks. She's attractive, fun, lots of things in common. During the date, she keeps checking her phone and acts annoyed by someone. Finally, she apologizes for it and tells me about some creepy stalker dude that won't leave her alone. And I guess to prove it, she calls him and kinda loudly says, stop contacting me or I'll call the police. Fast forward to the end of the day, she says she had a good time and wants to do it again sometime. Kind of flirty. And outside, before she gets in her car, she goes in for a long, passionate kiss. Then says, call me, and then winks. So I called a couple days later. No answer. Text the next day. No answer. Call in 2 days, and finally, she answered the phone and said kinda loudly, Stop contacting me or I'm calling the police. I could just see her on a date playing the stalker victim again. Crazy. You were one of her victims, man. I'm so sorry. Story 9. I went on a misadvised date to hang out at a guy's house. We were both smokers at the time, so he said we could smoke in his backyard. I show up, he comes outside, and he's about 150 pounds heavier than his picture would lead you to believe. He's not wearing any shoes and is scratching his flop belly in front of me. I don't know how to get out of the situation politely, so we go to his backyard where he leads me to tent, like a 2-person camping tent. After we smoke, I'm spiked enough that I don't care about being awkward and say that I have to get dinner because I have the munchies. I sprint to my car and jet. Story 10. I met a girl in eHarmony. This was at least 7 years ago. I went to pick her up at her dorm. First thing she wants to do is to drive to Planned Parenthood so she could get some morning after pills. Apparently, she'd gone hammered the night before and had lots of unprotected intimacy. Classy lady. I ended up driving her there. It wasn't that far away. The whole way there, she keeps going on and on about stuff and talking about how she wanted to experiment with grass, but she was afraid that it'd make her want to eat. That was the first and last time I ever met up with her. Story 11. I was doing online dating and found a 20-year-old girl who seemed cool, and she asked if I wanted to go out one night. I said sure. She gave me her address, and I'd pick her up. On the way over, I texted her, "Oh, by the way, what's your real name?" Because I only had her screen name. No response. I figured she was getting ready. Now I'm a 6'3" guy with a goatee, pulling up to a girl's house whose name I don't know. Somehow this doesn't set off any mental alarms for me. I walked up and knocked on the door, only to have her mom answer the door and ask, "Hi, can I help you?" And thus began the longest 5 seconds of my life. What should I say? I'm a stranger, here to get your daughter whose name I don't know. I was checkmated. The girl was upstairs, presumably. I went with a gamble and said, "Hi, I'm here to see, and the mom said, "Megan?" It paid off, but she probably thought I was a user, at best. Yeah, Megan. Sorry. Epilogue, the date sucked. I never saw her again. Story 12. I started meeting women slightly older than myself online for no-strings-attached relationships. I was 30 at the time, and most of the women were over 40. I was basically chatting online for a day, or not, meeting up in a pub for half a lager and then going back to their place or a hotel to have intimacy. I'd probably done this 5 or 6 times when I met a 45-year-old posh lady online, and we agreed to meet up in a pub. I got there, and she was already there, looking quite a bit older than 45, more like 55, and matronly, for want of a better word. She was worse than the usual NSA encounters, but I was really craving intimacy and decided to go along with it anyway. We chatted, had half a lager, and then she suggested we get another drink. I couldn't really be bothered, but decided, okay. I finished the second drink, and then I asked if we were going to a hotel or go back to her place. She got very upset, asking if I thought she was some kind of witch and that she didn't do that sort of thing. I got really embarrassed, went bright red, and said, "Oh, I must have gotten the wrong idea." We awkwardly chatted for another 5 minutes, and then I excused myself to go to the toilet. I skulked out the back door of the pub into my car. As I drove around to the front of the pub, she came out and threw the contents of her drink at me, called me names, and I drove off, sputtering. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 13. I actually have a couple of stories. First, it was the early 2000s, and I was pretty young. I met a girl on Zanga. She was really cute. Though her pictures looked a couple of years old, but still super cute. Agreed to meet up, and she said her mom could pick me up. Cool. My mom was out in front of the house when they arrived. I heard my mom talking, telling them she'd come get me. Mom walked in the door, looked at me with her most serious face, pointed at me and said, "You better be nice to her. Today will suck, but you put up with it until at least tonight." I mentally crapped myself. I walked outside, and the mom and daughter were so large their stomachs touched in the center of the car. I turned around, and my mom was standing in the doorway with that look. I walked to the car, and the mom asked her daughter if she wanted me to ride with them in the back. Cringe. The girl said, "That's okay." She then stated she wanted to go to the grocery store to get stuff for a barbecue. The girl was upset that scooters weren't available, and the mom said the store must be full of Americans. We went to her house, and she took me upstairs to her room. She showed me the Sharpie she used to draw on the walls and fiddle with. It turned out she had been essayed by her mom's ex-boyfriend and had gained over 200 pounds over the past couple of years and gotten really depressed. She told me I'd been helping her come out of it. I didn't have the heart to be mean about it. We remained friends online for a long time and talked, but never romantically. Well, hey, at least you were still there for her as a friend. Story 14. Gone on about 25 to 30 first dates in the past year. Most don't go anywhere, but here are my highlights. Girl number 1. tells me she enjoys doing substances, and then breaks down crying because her boyfriend cheated on her 2 weeks earlier. Girl number 2. Somehow grass comes into the convo. I say I smoke occasionally. She starts telling me off, calling me a loser smoker. I'm 27, have a career in corporate at a bank, about to go for my MBA at a top business school, and own my own place. She was a 28-year-old cashier who lived with her parents. Girl 3. Makes a racial comment halfway through. My office is in a not-so-great place in Toronto, so I made a joke that as long as you're not a victim, the area I work in is nice. She doesn't flinch, then responds, "Oh, right, there sure are a lot of black folks that live around there, eh?" Girl 4. Got upset at me because I made a crude joke about Justin Bieber. Not at the crudeness of the joke, but because she was a huge fan of his. Most were like this, though, and I'm not innocent. On my second day from the site, I read everywhere that the bill should be split. Ended up accidentally doing the math wrong, and somehow ended up making the girl not only pay for my half, but I made a profit. Now I always pay. Story 15. Girl lied about her weight in her photo. When we met, she said she would hug me, but all 4 cargo pockets in the front of her jacket were filled with broken glass. I was then regaled with a 2-hour tale about her Harry Potter fanfiction, and all my attempts to politely change the conversation were brushed aside. It got to the point where it dropped all pretenses and started chain-smoking and texting other people. Didn't really seem to mind and kept talking. I didn't respond when she asked me for a second date. Story 16. One time I went on a date with this cute girl to Boston, and we went to a bar. At this point, I was 6 months sober and knew this was a bad idea, but I kind of said, screw it, and went anyway. We sit at the bar and talk, and we're getting along great. When we order drinks, I get a cola and she gets a cocktail. She asks me why I didn't get a drink, and I just say, I don't really drink, which doesn't imply any form of alcoholism at all, just lameness. We go to the show my friend was having in the basement of an Alex club, and they're serving beers, and she goes and gets 2. For some reason, I don't hesitate and take the beer she gives me, open it, and start sucking it down. The moment was so bizarre, surreal, like an automaton. I went through the motions of accepting the drink, opening the drink, guzzling the drink down. I worked so hard to get to that point and blew it all for some girl I had just met who later ended up not taking me up on a second date. I understood. I kind of acted weird texting her after the first one. In a vacuum, the date went great. Cute girl, went to a bar and show. She totally digged me. We even made out at the show and on the train, but under the pressure of romance or potential romance, I went back to boozing for that one night, and that was truly a disaster. Thankfully, I'm still sober now, and that night didn't derail anything. But that's more luck than anything else. Don't be too hard on yourself, man. I've stumbled a lot, too. Story 17. So far, I've dated a blind guy who forgot to mention he was blind. I don't have a problem with this, but the date was kind of weird. A racist dude who considered my accent obnoxious. In his profile, he said that he was an open-minded who loved to travel and meet new people from different parts of the world. A guy who was recently released from a psych ward because he suffered a mental breakdown. He was very sweet, though. The 13-year-old kid was the deal breaker for me. A 40-year-old guy who was still living with his ex, a 23-year-old girl, an Indian guy who just wanted an intimate buddy. Sorry, pal, too old for that crap. Oh, and my crazy ex who just wanted to lose his V-card because he was going away. A guy who was a professional pool player, member of a small pool league of a small town in the south. And of course, the dude who said he had a girlfriend, but hey, it was okay to date other people because his girlfriend said she wanted an open relationship. And yeah, I'm forgetting many more. Since it's obvious, I don't know how to make good dating choices. I'm retired from that deal. Story 18. An OkCupid. Girl starts messaging me. We work in similar fields, have compatible senses of humor. There's lively, flirtatious banter. Things are promising. I state that while I'm no triathlete, I like the outdoors and being active outside. Hiking, running, rock climbing. Me too, she replies. I'm concerned that all of her pictures are black and white and overexposed and face shots only. I say, screw it, and propose we meet. She agrees. We decide that I will pick her up and we will take a walk at the beach to get to know each other. I knock on her door. She answers. She's 4 feet tall and around 250 pounds. We begin our walk on the beach. We walk about 1/8 mile before she asks to take a break because she is winded. She cries a little. My brain cringes. We talk about work. She tells me that she has coworkers that are of the same ethnicity, Filipino, as me. Want to know what phrases they taught me to say in Tagalog? She asks. She proceeded to say I love you in Tagalog. I decide that it's time we begin our arduous 1/8 mile walk back. She tells me how much she likes Filipino food and how well she cooks it too. Her Filipino ex-husband said her cooking was great. I did not call her back. Well, looks like she likes Filipinos. Story 19. Chatted with a guy from an online dating site. Agreed to meet up at a fair. Both of us being super awkward, we decided not to set a meetup place, but just wander around and see if we would run into each other. -5 to social skills. We did. I knew he was on the larger side because of his picture, but in real life, he was pretty rotund. No judgment, but it's an important piece of the story. So we wander around for a couple hours, not going on any rides, not getting any food, just looking at prized vegetables and livestock. When will this day end? Very soon. We decide to stop at a pig race and take a seat in the bleachers. Pig races are actually kind of fun. The last race is kind of novel because it's super chunky, jowly pigs that can hardly run. The announcer, for some reason, wanted to pick audience members to cheer on certain pigs. He announced that he would pick the fattest audience members to be cheerleaders for the fattest pigs and was going to do his best to match people and pigs based on looks. What the heck, announcer? So my day gets picked as a cheerleader, along with a handful of other hapless audience members. The pigs trundle or wander down the racetrack for 15 minutes while we clap and we quietly exit. After a particularly sweaty handshake, I leave. There is no second date. Story 20. We met on OkCupid and hit it off really well. She made cosplay video game weapons, like Titus's sword or what have you. It was funny, and I was a huge nerd that I did not know how to talk to women. We met for dinner and a movie, and sometime during the movie, she gets a call and sends it to voicemail. After the movie ends, she checks her voicemail and finds out her best friend has been in a bad car accident and that she needs to go now. She freaks out, can't find her car, and I drive her around the parking lot looking for it while I struggle to think of anything to say and end up not saying anything. I called once or twice after that, but she never answered. So either a tragic end to the night or she managed to avoid a second date in the most dramatic and elaborate way ever. That would be crazy. Story 21. Met a girl who lived like 40 miles away. I drive an hour plus to see her, often. She was a super conservative Catholic, but also had surprisingly strong romantic drive. You know what I mean. So she rationalized it in a sort of weird way. I want to have intimacy with someone who doesn't love me, so please, please, please tell me you love me so we can get it on already. I finally caved because we were both 19, and really, what 19-year-olds won't. She tells me she has a thing for it being rough. I say, okay, I guess we can do that. I put on the rubber, go in, and about a minute in, she slaps me hard across the face and I lose the mood. We break up about a week later and she starts hammering my phone nonstop for days, then finally looks up my work phone so she can tell me she's pregnant. I call BS and she actually does stop calling. She's married now, but she sent me 2 messages on Facebook wanting to get together sometime to chat. Yeah, I'm gonna get right on that. Story 22. I met the perfect guy for me. He was the right age, we had a crap load of similar interests and dreams, and our personalities just clicked. Not to mention that he was really good looking. We chatted for hours every day for several weeks. One day I tried messaging and got an error message. This was on Kick. That his phone was off or disconnected, never heard anything back. I tried to find him online but couldn't. I even reverse image searched the pictures he sent, and there were no results. I know he was who he said he was, I just wish I knew what happened. I hope he's okay and happy. He was a wonderful person and he's probably making some girl really happy. I'm just sad it ended with no closure and that the girl isn't me. Story 23. Met a guy online. Talked to him for a while. He lived in the same town and he invited me out to a movie. Met him 100 pounds heavier than his picture. Hideous and insane. Halfway through the movie, I texted my mom to call me and need something vital. She needed NyQuil for a cold she made up and I bounced. Horrible. Seriously. I was warped. I don't get pretending to be different. It's not going to gain you any friends or a girlfriend. Story 24. I was in middle school when AOL first came out. In one of the first few days in which my family had it, I met a girl in a chat room. She was a few years older than me, and we happened to live in the same state. We had a pretty solid connection and talked a lot for about a year or two. Online, over the phone, through letters, all the goofy stuff teenagers do. We even sent each other pictures once. Basically, I guess you would call it a relationship. Anyways, eventually got rid of AOL and we sort of lost touch for a year or two, but once AIM came out, we found each other again. At that time, we were both in high school. I was like a freshman and she was a senior, and we were both dating people, so we became more like pen pals. We always talked about meeting in person, but we lived about 10 hours apart, so I never really thought it would happen. Once she graduated high school, I believe she joined the military, if I remember correctly, and we lost touch again. Skip ahead another 2 years or so, and I'm a senior in high school. One day during spring break after one of our high school baseball games, some teammates and friends of mine came back to my house to hang out. We get there and my youngest brother is home and says some girl came to the house looking for me and asked to use her computer. I have no clue who it is. So I ask my friends to hang out. About 30 minutes later, she shows up, totally catching me off guard. Apparently, she was visiting some friends 2 hours away and wanted to make a surprise visit. The next 4 hours are some of the most awkward moments of my life, and not only that, but I morphed into a total schmuck. I don't really want to be alone with her because I had a girlfriend, whom I'm now married to, and I wasn't really attracted to her. I had no idea what she wanted to do, and I wasn't entirely sure what she was expecting. So, sensing how uncomfortable I was with the situation, my friends and even my brother start to leave. And all I have left is one friend and my mom. So, for the next 4 hours, my friend and I sit in my living room playing PlayStation while she watches and makes awkward conversation with my mom. I think at one point she did order us a pizza, which was cool, and she may have even fallen asleep on her couch for some portion. When she got up to leave, I walked her to her car and said goodbye and never saw or heard from her again. I tried finding her on Facebook, but she's either not on it or got married and changed her name. So if you're reading this, Jay, I just want to apologize for how I acted. It was totally out of character. You just caught me way off guard, and being 18, I didn't know how to react. I'm sorry. Yeah, you should apologize, bro. Story 25. Not mine, but a friend's. I met a girl on MSN before Facebook was anything popular. He asked her out online and they cyber dated for 2 weeks. He held a housewarming party and she attended, which would be the first time he met her. All photos had been significantly edited, and the girl was at least 3 times more overweight than our photos showed and literally got stuck in a leather lounge chair. She had to stay the night and drive back the next day, and my friend made the terrible decision to dump her on the night, so the poor girl had to sleep at his house after just being dumped. We still remind him of his ignorance to this day. Story 26. I've probably been on over 20 online dates from OkCupid, POF, Craigslist, and so on, but this one takes the cake. I was bored one night and wanted something to do, so I messaged a guy on POF and he asked what I wanted to do. I said, let's go to the casino. Lots of people, not too dark, various things to do. He said to meet him at a bar near his house, so I showed up and walked in. I saw a group of 6 to 8 guys looking at me and sort of laughing, and then I saw him in the mix. Okay, so I walked over and talked to him and met his friends. Weird. I finished the drinks and he said, let's all take his car to the casino. Against my better judgment, I said okay because it wasn't far, and he assured me a ride back to my truck. He valet parked and into the disco we went. Boom. At the bar, I just grabbed my melons and I clearly said no. I went to sit down to try and talk, and boom, he was on top of me, making out. I searched for his friends, but they were nowhere to be found. So I said, let's play slots, i.e. a bright room with lots of people. I grabbed a 20 out of my purse and tried to play slots, but his attempts wouldn't even let me pull the handle. I said I needed to go. We searched for his friends, and they were nowhere. We went to the car, and the valet had already given it to his friends who left us there. He proceeded to tell me he had a hotel room booked and it was time to stay there. I said no, and he got mad at me. I got a cab to my truck from the nice desk people at the hotel, and he wanted to go home because he didn't want to pay for a hotel room alone. Okay, he took my cab, so I said I would drive him home. An hour later, after following his directions, I entered a national forest and he was confused and wanted to pull over. I turned around. It was 5:30 a.m. and I dropped him back off at the casino, all while he was yelling at me. Story 27. Met with a woman who started a conversation with me on an online dating site. I wasn't there so much to get to date, but I just graduated college, my friends were mostly gone, and I wanted to make some friends. So I met with her. It was understood that this meetup was indeed a date, not a friend-finding thing. She's older than me, something she kept pointing out. In general, she's nice, has a good job as a speech therapist, thinks what I do is interesting, advertising, and it's going pretty well. Near the end, she gets a serious look on her face. She says that she wants to get married and have kids. I say I don't really like kids, and I'm not really a fan of marriage as a whole, but I'm not opposed to it if the right person comes along. Well, I guess she glazed over those answers in her mind because then she says, I'm very religious, so it means a lot to me that you are. I said, actually, I have no religious affiliation at all. It's really not important to me. Well, she gets up, puts on her coat, and says, well, it's important to me that you are. When you find meaning in your life and God, call me. I have not called her. Just kind of meh compared to others, but it upsets me a little. She was nice. I'm not at all one of those angry atheist types, and I really couldn't care less if she was religious. It's not like I put her down or anything. I don't know. Story 28. I met a girl on a free dating website. She seemed nice, and we went on quite a few dates together. She suffered from rather bad acne and had way too much facial hair for a girl. But being a nice guy, I didn't let that get in the way. After maybe 3 months together, she reveals that one night after we went and I dropped her off back home, she went out again to a club and got intoxicated and took substances and ended up in some Indian guy's house, and she had no idea what happened. It also came out that she had lied to her parents that she had a termination a year earlier. I got out of that crap as fast as I could. She was utterly crazy, and suddenly all the signs made sense. I have no real luck with online dating sites in the past, although I would never say don't do it. Just be careful. It showed me what I actually wanted from a partner by making me realize what I didn't want. It's all about getting past the naive stage. I also went on a really nice day with a girl to a sculpture park where we had a picnic. She seemed nice enough. I sent her a text and basically got a reply that her brother had recently passed away and she wasn't ready for a relationship. Was unusual. Never heard back from her. But I met the love of my life years later and we're engaged now. We didn't meet online. We met at uni. Although we never spoke, we did finally get together after we talked on Facebook, so online was the start of it. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.